Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us on our first live stream virtual panel, A Recruiter's Perspective to Getting Hired. Today, we'll be joining us Liz Martinez, and who we have with us right now is Dana Charfalia. And Liz will be joining us just shortly, but we thought since we're going live, we would go ahead and get started. First of all, Dana, thank you so much. I know life is crazy busy right now with so many things that we're juggling. So we appreciate your time to be able to share your insight and expertise to those that are watching. So I thought because our panel is focused so much on a recruiter's perspective, I thought maybe we could start with asking the question, like, what is a recruiter's job? I think some people have an idea of what recruiters do. Maybe some don't really understand. So maybe we could start there, and maybe you could share with our audience what a recruiter's job is.
Sure. So the good news is I have a perspective from a couple of different types of recruiters, all of which anyone who's watching, who's job searching, you'll likely come across at some point in your job search. So on the one hand, you have a recruiter who works for a recruiting agency. In that case, they are recruiting candidates for multiple companies at any given time. So they are recruiting, again, on behalf of the company that you would then work at if the process went well. Then you have folks like me who are internal recruiters who work specifically on behalf of one company. I work for Nerdery, which is a local consulting firm in technology, and I only recruit for this company. So when I call you, I'm calling you from a Nerdery email, from a Nerdery phone number. And the main difference between those two is that as an internal recruiter, it's in my best interest to truly find the best fit. And I know who you're going to be working with. I know your managers. I know the true company culture and what you're going to be getting into. If I'm an agency recruiter, I know some of those details, but I myself don't work for those companies I'm hiring for. So my information is limited, and I only know what the company decides to share with me to help me locate candidates. But either way, a recruiter's job is to help find the right fit for whichever company is in their best interest to find candidates for.
Perfect. That's a great explanation, because I think some people forget that we have internal recruiters in some companies and then external recruiters that are working on behalf of employers. So I really like the insight that you shared, working like on behalf of a company or in a company, how you have that insight, which I think is so helpful for candidates, especially when they want to learn so much, like if they want to learn more about a company, that actual insight, being able to work firsthand is something that's so awesome. So thank you for sharing. So, at Glendale Community College, we serve a very diverse population of students. We have students with just a diverse background, right? Some students, this is their first time in college. Some students who are re-careering, many degrees under their belt. So it's kind of all over the place in that regard, right? We see a lot of that. But a lot of them are looking for opportunities after they leave GCC. So like as entry-level candidates are looking for entry-level types of positions, what do you think they can do to make themselves stand out to a recruiter and to get their attention?
So I'm going to share a few things. And side note, I do have 2 kiddos at home. So if you happen to hear a little child noise, that's what that is. Both of them are sleeping right now, but you never know when they wake up. So especially as an entry-level candidate, the biggest thing for you is really understanding what value you truly bring to the table. Because, and remembering that even though you are entry level and you don't have a lot of experience maybe in the roles that you're searching for, you still have a lot of value to bring to that employer. And keeping that top of mind and knowing what that is before you go in the door, virtually or, in person. So on a resume, making sure that if you're applying for a specific job, make sure that the skills that they're asking for in that job truly come forth and shine through on your resume. And, don't just stop at submitting a resume and calling it a day. Submit a resume and then go on LinkedIn and do a search for recruiter at whatever company you just applied for. There are no hard and fast rules on LinkedIn and what you should and shouldn't do. But in my experience, what I really love from a recruiter's perspective is when a candidate reaches out to me specifically and says, hey, I found you on LinkedIn. I just applied for this job. I'm super excited about it. Wanted to connect with you to see if we could chat further. And in that case, you then have touched my company twice. The more times you touch a company after you apply, the more likely they are going to get eyes on your resume and a phone call then scheduled to at least talk about the position. From my standpoint, when it comes to entry-level candidates, I talk to a lot of them. And the value of applying for a job, even if you might be a little bit too junior for that job, is that if a recruiter sees the value that you've put forth on your resume and says, not a great fit for this role, but we're going to have another role open up in a couple of months. And they may see that value in your resume, and you may not even know that that role exists yet. So it's always worth the chance, especially if it's a company you really, really want to work for.
Great feedback. Actually, that kind of ties into a great question. We actually had someone from our Instagram account. There's a specific, so Alejandro from Instagram wanted to ask the question, is LinkedIn worth starting ASAP? So you're talking about LinkedIn. So I'm like, oh my gosh, such a great segue to ask this question. How valuable is LinkedIn, and how often do you all use LinkedIn as a recruiter? And should people be on LinkedIn ASAP?
Yes. Yeah. So, gosh, I've been on LinkedIn for 10 years now, using it almost every day, even when I wasn't a recruiter. So from a recruiter's perspective, LinkedIn's, for most of us, the first place we go. And if you're not there, we're asking ourselves, why not? If you're not there, you don't exist a lot of times, to be honest, especially if that's where I spend most of my time and that's where I get most of my candidates, to be honest with you. I just, candidates who care about their career and want to highlight the skills they have, the experience they've gained, and network with like-minded professionals, that's where you are. So in my professional opinion, if you care about your career and you want to grow it and surround yourself with like-minded, smart individuals you can not only learn from, but connect with and help grow, it's mutually beneficial. It's not just about you getting a job. It's about thinking bigger about, what do I want my career to look like in 5 years? And that's never going to just include you alone on an island. It's going to include the people you meet and the people you work with along the way. And LinkedIn is just one tool that can be extremely powerful in making sure that you're successful.
Perfect. Hi, Liz. Thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Sorry about the technical difficulties. It's okay. It's technology.
It's always good and bad, right?
Yeah. So I was just asking Dana, after this question, we can kind of go into formal introductions since you both are here. But I was just asking Dana, we had somebody outreach to us in Instagram in regards to LinkedIn, and the question that they had asked, and Dana was kind of sharing her perspective, is, as a recruiter, is LinkedIn worth starting ASAP? So how might you use LinkedIn as a recruiter? And if you think it's worthwhile for people to be on LinkedIn?
Sure. I'm probably sure I'm repeating, some of the things that she said as well, but LinkedIn is one of the tools that we use for our social media presence. So it's definitely something that I think is worth creating a profile. The most important thing is keeping it updated, right? So we want the most current information. We want to know if you're looking actively, and LinkedIn has all these great search capabilities for recruiters. So we can search for people that are interested in relocating to specific areas like Phoenix. So even if you're out of state or anything like that, you can indicate Phoenix as a place that you're targeting, which helps recruiters. Also, some different things LinkedIn is doing as well as some of like hashtags that are like ready to work. So recruiters are able to easily search and find candidates that are actively looking for employment right now. So I think it's definitely one of the good tools that are out there to use for job search.
Awesome. So maybe we could do, I know we did things kind of background, but we're going live, so we just wanted to get started. So let's maybe do a formal introduction, if that's all right, with everybody. Maybe Liz, if you want to start, maybe introducing yourself, where you work, and whatever you'd like to share with our audience.
Sure. So my name's Liz Martinez. I'm the manager for talent acquisition at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona. I'm really proud of the work we do at Blue, not just for our members, our customers, but also the community, especially right now with COVID-19. We are definitely out there. You can view all of our resources and jobs and things like that at jobs.azblue.com, which has a lot of information about what we're doing right now to help during this pandemic. And then also, again, I'm on LinkedIn. You're welcome to connect with me. But new feature we have is a chatbot called Olivia as well. So a lot of great opportunities to connect after this podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm Dana Charfalia. I am the talent advocate for our Phoenix office at Nerdery. We are a digital transformation consultancy, so I most often look for candidates in the technology field, whether just junior level, senior level, architect level, you name it. If it's a technical role, I'm filling that. Been doing that for the last 4 years now, and in an old life, I was a career counselor for GCC and had my own business for a while, so helping people, not only helping companies find the right fits, but also helping people find the right jobs is something I love to do too.
Perfect. Thank you. So it looks like we actually have some questions coming in. I don't know if you can see them off to the right, but I'll go ahead and ask them. So we have Brent asking or stating that LinkedIn is great, but for many students, they don't have much information to fill out their profile. Do you have any suggestions on how to expand their LinkedIn presence? It's a great question, Brent.
I can go ahead and start off with that one. So something I recommend, and we partner with some local high schools as well and provide some internships and opportunities to do resume creations and building things like that. And my recommendation is to learn how to use your personal experience and translate that into work-related experience. So if you're a student and you're juggling, homeschool balance, that's time management to be able to find time to do your homework and also your responsibilities at home, so using some of those personal experiences and translating them into a work-related experience would be helpful. Also highlighting any other activities that you're doing or involvement, like with student life and leadership and things like that, are all great things to highlight on resumes.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
All great things. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that maybe people who are just starting out on LinkedIn underestimate is that a lot of LinkedIn and the success of it isn't necessarily what's in your profile. It is what you do with it. So the people you connect with, the posts you comment on, the articles you share. So while you may not have a robust profile and tons of jobs to fill in on there, use what you have, whether that's in the education you're pursuing, the classes you've taken, the volunteer work you've done, and even positions that don't relate to the job you might be looking for. Having any of your background there just to show even where you started is of value. And let's say, maybe you are working on a home project, or maybe you love to code and you're building a website for someone or your cousin, or you're helping with someone. Those are projects that need skills, and you can put projects on your profile to showcase, here's what I'm up to right now. Here are the skills I'm working on. And even if they don't necessarily apply to the jobs you're applying for, I think everyone values a multidimensional skill set. And you never know what skill you might need in the next job you apply for or the jobs you may need in the future. So if you don't have a lot there, don't be afraid that people are going to say, well, why are you here? You don't have anything to put on there. Most of the time, if you connect with people and you put out there what you're looking for and what you're hoping to do, like, you'll be surprised at how welcoming people can be and how helpful they can be.
No, definitely. I would agree. These are all really great. And what I've noticed from my own personal experience working with students, especially on their LinkedIn, is that they don't realize all those additional sections that they could actually add to their profile. Like you were saying, projects that they're working on, or even courses. So if they don't have a lot of experience, just mentioning maybe some courses. So kind of thinking outside the box and thinking outside of work, right? Like you were saying, Liz, what are the transferable skills that they might be learning, you know, inside or even outside of the classroom? Those are things that they can add. And I love that you shared, Dana. And even if that content after looking at those sections isn't much, it's really how you engage. LinkedIn, for me, there's so many powerful tools, but it goes unnoticed for a lot of people. I use the alumni tool often when working with students. So a lot of students don't know this, but through alumni, you can look up like Glendale Community College or ASU or wherever you are attending or where you want to attend. You could see, you know, if you were to major in computer science, what are alumni at GCC with a degree in computer science? Where are they doing? So it's that power of networking that you were talking about, outreaching and seeing maybe an informational interview could happen and take place. There's so many wonderful things I think that could happen beyond LinkedIn. So I would recommend, if for those watching, if you're not used to LinkedIn or don't know how to use it, they have a really good LinkedIn for higher ed platform for a lot of students that have workbooks and links and videos to take a look at. So take a peek at that, and hopefully that'll help you in getting started and understanding, you know, beyond just that living resume that you have in your profile, what other things you can do aside from that. We have another question from Brent. He asks if we can talk about having proper email addresses for resumes and job applications.
Seen some interesting ones over the years.
Good ones.
I'm sure Liz and I will agree. It's this, your safest bet is just to use some form of your name, first and last name. Some companies may enjoy more nerdy email addresses. Like I work for a tech company and we're called Nerdery. So someone with an email address that talks about, you know, Batman or Star Wars, we may love it. But a company that isn't like ours culture-wise may see that and think, nope. So I would say your safest bet is just first and last name or some form of that. But, you know, for the right company, it can actually help you stand out if it's not.
I definitely agree. I've seen a lot of interesting email addresses as well in recruiting. And, you know, it's great to have your personal email. A lot of people have different email addresses that they use for spam and shopping online. And some have, you know, where they get their important email. I would recommend creating a business email or, you know, an email address that you feel comfortable and confident in using for your resume and job applications, definitely.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is know your audience, right? May work for some companies, may work for your company, Dana, may not work for you though, Liz.
Right.
Also, I always tell students, if you're questioning whether or not you should use an email, you probably shouldn't use an email. So having a good solid one that you use solely for job searching, job applications, and resume is probably a good idea. Yeah. Since we're talking about resumes, do you all have any advice to give in regards to resume and interviewing from a recruiter's perspective? Like maybe what can they put on their resume, or interviewing, like what are common pitfalls that you find that you're like, as a recruiter, you just want to share this with other people so that they know?
The interviewing part, and because I've talked to so many entry-level candidates, and I still go back to, I remember when I was doing workshops at GCC talking to these students about interviewing, and still the same advice rings true, is when, at least from my perspective, when you're entry level, one of the things that I frequently hear is, I want to learn and I want to grow. And a lot of times entry level candidates focus more on what they're going to get from their next employer versus what they can offer that employer. And so when you're in the interview and your recruiter says, what are you really looking for? And your answer is, I'm looking for a place I could really learn and grow, and that's important. But if you don't have a good answer for what you're really looking for and why, start there. What's important to you? And not only what's important to you, but also going back to what I had mentioned earlier in our conversation is, what value do you bring to an employer that you can, my little one just woke up from her nap. You can hear that. It's a screamer. Sorry, guys.
No.
There's so much opportunity to show your value. And if you don't use the time that you have with that recruiter to talk about that value and only talk about what you're looking for, then you may miss an opportunity to shine.
I think for me, kind of piggybacking off of that, is to make sure your resume is tailored to the role that you're applying for as well. Oftentimes I'll see, the summaries, just kind of generic and vague. We want to see that you're applying specifically for our job and for a certain role. We want to see that you've read the job description and you meet the minimum requirements of that, and it's highlighted in your resume. We're using that resume to make sure you meet the requirements of the job. So if they're not talking to each other, that's honestly an easy screen out for recruiters. If we don't see that you have those requirements on your resume, if you're applying for a technical analyst role and you're talking about customer service position, there's some disconnect there. So we want to make sure that you're reading the jobs, you're not just throwing mud at the wall and seeing what sticks, and that you've put some effort into, the application process as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so many questions. Let's see if I have gotten any more come in. I think we've answered those two that have come in so far. Awesome. Okay, let's see here. There's so many questions that I want to ask you, and I know that we don't have a lot of time today, but I'm trying to think what are the best questions we could ask for our audience members? So you've kind of already talked about resumes and interviewings. I think this might be a fun question to ask. Can you tell us about maybe the last job applicant that you had that might have wowed you with their application? Was there anything that you're like, oh my gosh, I need to interview this person? Something that stood out to you as a recruiter that maybe you don't see as often. I feel like this will just be a good story to share with our audience.
I have a recent one. Yeah. So this is for a manager level position, but is in a position in which the skills required are a lot on the creative side. And a lot of times people don't put a lot of extra effort into an application, but my poor little one, this candidate, he actually created the resume in a way that completely covered every single bullet point of our job description. So he literally in his resume put my experience, what you're asking for, next to each other, and creatively created a little story resume that made it very clear that though his background wasn't a perfect fit, he created the story as to how his unique experiences actually were a fit. Had he not done that, I wouldn't have put the pieces together and actually called him.
Nice. What about you, Liz? Was there any candidate that has wowed you during the application process? A good story to share?
Yeah, I've had a similar situation like you indicated as well, where the candidate's experience, had it not been for the cover letter that was included with that highlighted, our requirements and the experience that they were bringing that matched those together, I probably would have overlooked it, because oftentimes, sometimes a job title doesn't really reflect the work that you do. So taking the time to highlight that, like you indicated as well, really stands out for me as well as a recruiter, because if I see a job description, I don't necessarily think it might have a certain type of experience. So I think those are the things that we need to highlight more in the resumes to match that requirement and skill set that we're looking for.
Awesome. So like connecting the dots, right? You can't just assume that people will get it, but you have to really connect the dots to help you all understand how their background is a fit for that position. Okay, we have another question. As a recruiter, do you like or dislike a student being assertive and submitting a resume or cover letter for a job that may not be open or available right now?
I love it. We actually at Nerdery, we have a general email that anyone who is interested in working for us, but we don't have a role that fits, that they can email that. And it's rare that, you know, the timing lines up and we actually are hiring for something that someone submits a resume for. But I look at every single one of those emails that comes through, and, you know, if someone really goes the extra mile and says, I want to work for you, and here's why, and here's are the skills I have. I don't know if you're hiring today, but I want to get on your radar and have a chat with you and learn more about the company and show you what I can offer. If I have the bandwidth, I will talk to those candidates, because at least for my company, what we're hiring for changes all the time because we're a consultancy. And so a lot of the times what we hire for is dependent upon the projects that we sell with our clients. And so that can change in 24 hours. So one day I may not have any roles available. The next day I might have 10. So I always make time for those candidates when I have the ability to. So absolutely, yes, do it.
Yeah, I agree. We're always looking for new ways to connect with candidates, even for jobs that aren't available right now. I know we mentioned LinkedIn earlier, and that's just one of the tools that are out there. I mentioned our chatbot that we have an opportunity for you to engage in, and at the end, you know, make time to speak to a recruiter directly. Again, using your connections and your networks, your platforms, different tools that are out there. Now is the time to create those relationships and, you know, just stay in communication, because you never know what's going to come up or become available. I know for Blue Cross, we don't post temporary positions, but right now we're actively recruiting for temporary roles to help support open enrollment. So just different things like that. You never know what an organization is going to need or what their process is. So using your connections and your networks to help you, you know, create those relationships now is a great opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I love to hear that, because a lot of times people don't really think that, right? They don't see a job posting. So some of them just never think about sending something in. But I have a funny story, because we had at my son's school, one of the now assistant director, there was no active opening for that position. It just so happened that she was moving from another state to Arizona. She felt that it was a good fit because it's Montessori. And before you know it, they ended up hiring an assistant director that they weren't planning on hiring, but they couldn't not interview her, and she eventually got it. So because you shared that story, I didn't kind of cross my mind until you actually said, I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually know somebody where that actually worked when they did that. Okay, so one of the questions that I kind of wanted to get to is, obviously with COVID-19 and the changing landscape in the workforce, how do you see that kind of changing the recruitment process? Like, are you seeing a trend in recruitment that's kind of happening amongst your colleagues because of the current landscape? Are you seeing that the recruiting processes are changing? Are interviews mostly being done online? Like, what kind of changes do you see happening now, or future trends that could come about because of the current landscape that we're in?
I think in recruiting, we're going to constantly be changing to meet the candidates' needs. Right now, with this pandemic, of course, there's a lot of limitations for face-to-face interviews. I know for Blue Cross, we went from 25% to 97% of us working from home, just to help keep our employees safe and be able to continue to serve our customers and things like that. So that did affect our recruiting process. Of course, we're not offering face-to-face interviews right now. We're using different platforms like Microsoft Teams and Zoom and WebEx and all those great video interview platforms that everyone's using today to continue the recruiting process and meet the needs of the organization, as well as keep people safe. I think that's definitely going to be continuing to evolve. We're going to remain fluid and work through, this pandemic and whatever may come in the future as well.
I piggybacking off of what Liz said, I think how I recruit and how I find candidates hasn't really changed, but how we bring them through the process, of course, has had to change. We want to meet people in person. We want to show you our office and show you where you're going to work every day, but we're just limited on that right now. And so I think having that conversation, just being very straightforward, like, what are you really looking for? What's important to you? And even more so, really diving deep into what makes sense for someone and vice versa before a hire is made, just because they're not able to get all the answers they might need to really be confident. But this landscape there's so much unknown that what we do today and how we handle it today, may look very different in next month or 6 months from now. But I think what does look different is onboarding. Once you're made that offer, you're onboarding from home, which a lot of people probably don't mind. But again, you're missing out on those relationships and, seeing in person what your company actually looks like. And you may miss some of the important aspects of the job, and those kinds of things I think are bigger considerations for us, at least right now, and making sure that people are set up for success, whether or not they're remote or in the office.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Liz, you had mentioned how you went from 25 to 95 and percentage of people working from home. And you were, Dana, we're talking about that onboarding and things mostly being done online. What type of web etiquette would you suggest or provide to applicants as they go? Because you're right, it's completely different kind of going in person versus having to do everything online. So now people have to start getting used to what is a proper etiquette we should follow when functioning online, whether that is through interviewing or through the onboarding process. Have you seen kind of common pitfalls that you've experienced personally or challenges people have overcome that you'd like to share, or just general advice on web etiquette that people should be following during this time? And beyond this time, that it might go on a little longer than we all
expect. She has something good to share. She's like,
I know. I'm like, I have a funny story. Since we're doing virtual interviews, I had a candidate that showed up in a tank top and a beach hat, and we were kind of thrown back. Yes, I think virtual interviews are considered to be more informal. But a lot of people are calling it the Corona business outfit, business on top, party at the bottom. But, we want you to put your best foot forward. An interview is where you basically have your elevator speech and you're selling yourself to the employer. You want to be professional. You want to be your authentic self. But again, if it were an in-person interview, you'd be dressing up, professionally and showing up. And that's the same thing that we would want for virtual interviews as well. And again, there's a lot of great resources and tools out there for you to look up, how to be successful in a virtual interview and how to prepare. So there's a lot of great things out there for you as well.
Yeah. I will say, as a mom in a not huge house that has 2 young children, there's so much you can't control. And if I would say what I find, what I appreciate is when I have a call scheduled with the candidate, and if they know that there might be background noise or, they're in a scenario that they can't control, just let me know ahead of time so I know what to expect. And it's okay. We're all figuring this out, and how to live and how to work despite not being able to leave our homes, or a lot of times having our kids out of our homes. There's just what I love about COVID, and I don't love anything about it specifically, but what I love about what's happening right now is people are seeing different sides to their coworkers. They're seeing, we're all sharing in these same chaotic moments, and there's so much grace that is offered, I think, right now because of how much we just can't control. And so I think if you do your best to put yourself in a situation where you can be in a quiet, well-lit space, not be a floating head like this, have it from your chest up, wear what you'd wear to a normal interview and show up, be confident. And if there is background noise and this stuff, something you can't control, laugh it off and say, I'm so sorry. My little ones, or whoever it might be, maybe your husband forgot you're on a call and he walks through the background. Like some things are going to happen. And if you have a sense of humor and just say, oh, I apologize about that, just can't control them. In my opinion, if you have an interviewer who is a complete jerk and is not understanding of something you can't control and they don't hire you because of that, you may not want to work for them anyways.
Yeah, that's a great point. To kind of mention that ahead of time, we're all human. We're all in probably very similar type of situations. I have a dog that barks in the background, or a house full of kids, and a fiance that's very needy as well. So, it's just life, and we're all going through it together, like you said. So that's a great point to mention. If you're starting an interview, just be blunt and upfront. I had interviews earlier today, and I had an AC technician coming to fix our upstairs AC, and I'm like, I may have to, mute you momentarily as I'm dealing with this situation. Just making that awareness upfront is a great point.
Yeah, you guys are so right. I feel like honesty is kind of key at this point. And I love that you shared that we're kind of seeing different sides of individuals at this time, because I know I've talked about this with a lot of different colleagues is, this is my home and my background, and you could see that where people never used to see that before. So it's nice that honesty up front, I think, is a good rule to follow, right? Like, by the way, this is a situation, and hopefully, a lot of people will be empathetic. And if not, like you said, Dana, you have to think about that. If it's not okay during an interview, how might that be after the interview, right? And is that something that you're going to want to have to deal with and worry about constantly? So I'm glad you made those points, because I think people often forget that interview is two-way street, right? So many people feel like they have to sell themselves, but at the same time, they also need to get the information to help them decide whether or not that's going to be a good fit for them as well. So very telling in those situations for sure. Okay, I'm trying to go through our interviews. We've done a really good job about answering a lot of the questions that I kind of have shared with you all. I'm just kind of going through it quickly to see if there's something. Do you see that employers will be hiring for more opportunities in the fall? Do you guys see that happening kind of in the world of recruitment? I know it's so hard to say, because before it was, a lot of job postings kind of went down, and then it's kind of been fluctuating. But what do you kind of anticipate with fall? Like, I don't know if you kind of are seeing it with your company now, or
I know Blue is seeing that. I think at first, when COVID-19 hit, there was a lot of uncertainty, and we still have that today, but we weren't quite sure how long this was going to last. We thought it would be a few weeks maybe. And so we did take off some postings, and with the intent of, in a few weeks, everything will be great and we'll repost them. But now we're seeing that this type of remote work environment may continue. But it gave us some time to develop more, virtual interview processes and virtual onboarding and, virtual training and being able to support the virtual world now that I think will probably continue for quite some time, for us at least. So I think now, as we kind of have some momentum in how this process is working, we're going to see more positions becoming available as we're now feel more confident in supporting, bringing in new hires and making sure they have the tools and resources they need for this virtual training and remote work environment that we're in today.
Yeah, I agree with that. From my company, we went for a couple months without hiring a whole lot, and now we're really picking up steam, and I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. I think companies adapt maybe more quickly than even they realize they can. And once things are adapted for, and people understand, like, okay, this is our reality right now. What can we do to make the most of it, and how do we move forward? Or I think honestly, a lot of opportunities that weren't there before, we're going to see new ones, because companies are also thinking of how can we help other companies like make this transition smoother. And so I think we're going to see more more companies coming out with products. And I think there is a positive side to this. And it's, the world responds when things happen. And I think people surprise each other. And I think we're going to see the same with job postings.
Yeah, definitely. We just had another question came in. As a recruiter, are you hosting or participating in virtual job fairs? Are your companies hosting any, or are you participating in virtual job fairs that are happening?
We are not at right now, and that's mostly because we're just not hiring a whole lot. And when my company does job fairs specifically, we'll do job fairs in a very specified technical space, just because that's what makes the most sense for us. But we're small. So.
Yeah, we're definitely participating in some different virtual job fairs and networking opportunities. Just trying, like I said earlier, to stay fluid and meet candidates' needs. And, we're still hiring. So to fill our positions and create those relationships, like I mentioned as well, because even if we don't have a job that you would be interested in today, the very near future, we most likely will have something.
Perfect. So I will connect with you, because we are planning our job fairs to be virtually for fall. We did our first one in spring, very last minute, and we learned a lot from it. And obviously, with the given situation, we're also going to be hosting it virtually. So maybe we'll have you all there. Okay, so we've covered a lot of things, I want to say, in the last 45 minutes. So we've kind of talked about what maybe applicants can do to help them stand out in regards to resumes and maybe interviewing. Is there anything else that you feel like we might have missed that you think would be valuable to share with our audience of how they could really stand out to a recruiter?
Gosh, I mean, I'll be honest, I could talk about this stuff all day. We could be here for a long time for me giving you advice. But I think one thing that is helpful for any job searcher, I mean, whether you are entry level, a student, a re-career, it doesn't matter. Your mindset is very, very important. If you're stuck in a negative mindset spiral of, oh, I just don't have the experience, I'm never going to get the job I want, or, that stuff is hard, and we're experiencing a lot of hardships in COVID times for outside reasons other than just job searching. But if your mindset isn't right, you'll carry that with you into your interviews, and it will affect how well you do. So if you find that you're stuck in a negative mind spiral, I mean, everyone can respond to those differently, but I mean, whether it's watching a funny like cat video before you go into an interview to like up your spirits a little bit and make you a little bit more lighthearted, or reading an uplifting quote or a book or something that will get your mind right before you step into that interview. So you can carry with you a positive attitude and bring to your best. I think that's going to be really important, because your nonverbal communication and how you carry yourself, and if you're feeling really, really down, it's going to come through in that interview. So call a friend, watch a video, read a quote, whatever makes you feel happy and more positive. Really try to focus on that before you jump into any interviews. And even while you're applying to jobs, that energy kind of follows you wherever you go. So if you can, jam out to some music, make yourself a nice cold drink, whatever you like. Try to make job searching as enjoyable as possible so that you can bring that energy with you.
I agree. I call it your interview hype man. So whatever that is, to get you hype and pumped and ready to go, find that. And it could be different for anyone, like you said. Great examples there.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, because I think that's one thing that we don't really talk too much about is that mindset. And I know myself and Laura, who's our student services specialist, who's wonderful and works with students and community members, we sometimes have those conversations together when we're meeting about somebody that we're working with. And you could tell when somebody is in that negative mindset, because it truly does seep out in all aspects of the job searching process, even going through interviews. So I appreciate you sharing that with our audience, because that's probably something that isn't talked about very much or addressed, and it does make such a huge difference through this process. So thank you for sharing that. With that, I had no other questions. I wanted to kind of leave off with, any advice you felt that we might have been missing that we wanted to share. And I think we're able to cover a lot of different things within the last 45, 50 minutes. So I appreciate you both joining our first Career Services live stream. Like I mentioned before, I know you all are super busy with your roles and what you're doing and the juggling act that we're all kind of facing during this time. So I appreciate you dedicating some time out of your busy schedule and joining us this afternoon as we kind of talk about your perspective on how to help individuals through this process. So thank you so much for your time. Thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks, Liz.
See you.
Bye.